Northwest with Hal Byrd. I'm Hal Byrd, and on today's video, we are going to be talking about the most difficult part of the real estate market right now. And so as you come in, make sure to like this video, make sure you're still subscribed. 80% of the people that watch this channel are not subscribed. So if you enjoy our content, if you find it at all helpful or informative, please consider subscribing. It really helps us out and it doesn't cost you anything. And I wanted to talk about this topic because if you've been following the real estate market at all, if you're considering purchasing in this market or selling in this market, whether you're relocating or you're just moving within the local area, I thought that this was a good timely video because what is today? The 16th. So we are about 2 weeks away from the end of the year. And I still have 3 clients' transactions or escrows to close out before the end of the year. And none of them have been all that simple. I'm going to explain through these examples, through 3 of my clients' transactions, what's been challenging and how it's been playing out with, right now I have 3 buyers under contract. I do have an active listing as well. But I've noticed that most of the people that come to me because they're relocating, or maybe they moved up to the Pacific Northwest and are renting. Hi, JB. And maybe they're renting. They might be ready to purchase in the new year. And actually, so today's Friday, and last night we were out running on the waterfront, and it was also a Christmas ships event. And if you don't know what that is, since, I don't know, it's been going on for decades, like more than 50 years or something like that, the Christmas ships in Portland. And what it is this group of people who decorate their ships with fun, festive, Christmassy lights, and then they sail on the Willamette and Columbia rivers during Christmas times, and they have certain dates that they do it. We actually took 2 groups of clients out to see it. Make sure you guys like the videos you're coming in and drop a comment. I love hearing from you guys, especially when we're live, but if you're in the replay gang, let me know. And so it's a really fun, long-standing Portland area Christmas tradition. And so we were running along the waterfront last night, and we didn't realize that it was overlapping with the Christmas ship. So there was tons of people out at the waterfront, like the whole way. I mean, all the way from the new waterfront, which is on the west side of I-5, through the whole trail. People were parked in their cars along the street. People were out along the trail with their kids all bundled up, and I saw some people with chairs and heaters, and they were out getting ready to look at the ship. So anyway, we're running along, and we hear someone say, "Go Hal and Jarrett," and we're like, who? Like, who's saying that? And I didn't recognize them, and they're like, "We watch your channel, and you're the reason we moved up here, and we're thinking about moving or purchasing in the new year." And so I thought that was really cool. So maybe you're like those people. Maybe you moved up here and you're renting and you want to purchase in the new year. So let's go through these 3 scenarios with 3 separate clients and kind of the challenges that each of my clients have had. And hopefully, we're all hoping that they close by the end of the year. Maybe things work out, maybe they don't. That's yet to see. They're all at different stages in their transaction too. So the first client I have, that example, is a couple who has investment properties in California and a primary home in California, and they are selling their investment property down there to buy one up here. So they're not going to try to do the long distance landlording thing. They're going to transfer their investment properties up here. So when we first went under contract, they were going to pay cash pending the sale of their property, and they had a buyer, but they did not have all of the funds. So they were going to take the funds, the proceeds out of the sale of their investment condo, and put it towards this new price or this new property. So just trade like for like. They were going to do a 1031 exchange so that they could save taxes. We could talk about that if that's something you're interested in. And what happened is their buyer down in California backed out. And so we had to change their contract to go from being a pending sale to going back on market, because the seller has to know what's going on and agree to what's going on. And the seller has been incredibly flexible. And that's what the most difficult thing about the market is. So I guess I'll tell you early on, it's how much flexibility you have to have in this market. So they went back on the market. The seller was giving them until November 30th to find another buyer so that they could continue to pay cash. November 30th came. They did not get a second offer on their investment property. And if we didn't do anything, the transaction would have terminated and they would have gotten their earnest money back. But they didn't want to terminate. They located this property. We ran comps on the value of the property. We ran rental comps. They wanted to move forward with this property. So they said, well, what do you think the seller will let us get a loan? So we went to the seller and asked, hey, do you think that they could get a loan? One of my lending partners, Rebecca Bustamante, she works for Guild Mortgage, she can close in about 15 days. So on November 30th, we set a new closing date. We had to back it out twice now, for December 16th. So they started going through the loan process. And because this was an investment property and just a couple of things conspired against my clients that were completely out of their control, their interest rate was going to be nearly 8% on this investment property. And while paying cash made sense for the rental numbers and everything, when they factored in this 8% loan, the numbers no longer made sense with the payment. So at that point, they were like, well, if we take this loan, we're just going to be buying the property just because we're not going to have any cash flow. It doesn't really sound like it doesn't feel like a sound investment. And so they were very on the fence. And so what they ended up doing, and I mean today, so they should have closed today, but last week, well, over the weekend, earlier this week, we spoke to the seller and we said, hey, we're still really committed to moving forward in this transaction, to closing it, to completing it. Would it be okay if we went back to cash? So at this point, we went from them being pending or going under contract based on a pending sale of their property to that property going back on the market. Now they couldn't do a 1031 exchange. We didn't find a buyer. Going to a loan and now going back to cash. And they're going to sell some stock and compile from various accounts. They have the ability to pay cash without the sale of the home, but not everyone's in that position. And it hasn't been easy for my clients. The initial closing date on this property, we went under contract on October 17th. And we were originally supposed to close November 21st. Then when they lost their original buyer, we had to back the date out. We basically didn't have an official closing date until they found a new buyer, because the closing date would have been 3 days after that closing. It's a little complicated contract stuff. That's my job to know and understand and communicate in an easy way to you to make your life not stressful. So we ended up going back to cash and we close next week. So we had to give the seller some concessions in the way of a lease back, because she hasn't been able to secure housing, because we've been under contract for almost 2 months. Which is very uncommon in Washington. Most of my escrows are about, I'd say 20 to 25 days is standard. 30 days sometimes, but that's even less common. We can get everything we need done in about 3 weeks. So if you're wondering how long it's going to take to once you find your property to close, 3 weeks is definitely doable. If you're cash, which a lot of my clients right now are cash buyers, we can close in 7 days. I don't like to close that early because it really shortens your inspection time these days. I like my cash clients to have anywhere from at least 15 to 20 days. It just depends on the scenario and what makes sense and what the client's comfortable with. So in this transaction, for my clients who are purchasing an investment property, they've had to be extremely flexible, and the seller has had to be extremely flexible also. And everyone is on the same page and moving towards the same goal, but we've had a lot of twists and turns along the way. So flexibility is imperative. And so while you can get a great deal right now, we can get better pricing in terms of we can put an offer in less than list price and often get it accepted. We can also ask for concessions on inspection. And all of this I was doing during the seller's market, even though you hear people say, oh, you just always had to go over asking. About a quarter of my clients during the seller's market in the last 2 years were actually under contract at less than the list price. And then I had a few clients pay, tens and tens of thousands over list price. So it's very dependent on the situation and the particular house. The next client that I want to highlight is their inspection is actually today. So as soon as I get off live with you guys, I'm going to go meet with them for their inspection. Their house has been listed since July 15th. It took them 4 months to find a buyer. So this whole time from July 15th to I guess mid-November when they finally found a buyer, we were looking at homes. They were considering putting offers in. I think we did put a couple offers in that we lost. They were multiple offer situations, if I remember correctly. But because they would have been contingent on the sale of their home, we had to find a buyer, and it just kept coming up that they were having such difficulty with the changes in the market. They listed shortly after the market started to change, and the more interest rates went up and up and up, the harder time they had selling. So it took them 4 months to sell their home out of state. They did close on that home just a couple days ago, and they are also taking the cash out of their property. Like most people who've bought more than 3-4 years ago have, even today, even with the market softening, a substantial amount of equity. And so they're taking the equity out of that home to purchase a home here, cash. And it's been interesting and a challenge, and their buyer down there was asking for a lot, but we've finally gotten to this point. And the past 5 months, really, it's been 5 months since they listed. Now they're finally closed. But they've had to be patient that entire time and be flexible. And we put an offer in on this really cool, really unique property. If you follow me over on Instagram at Hal Byrd _, you can probably see some behind the scenes. I'll take some photos. But they have this, it's not just any individual room that makes their house interesting. It's the way that it has been upgraded over time and the potential that the house has. And her husband's, she's a nurse, her husband's a carpenter. And so when they put their own touch on it, and I saw what they did to their last property, I'm so excited to see what it comes out like. It's a great property as is, and I just think they're going to make it even better. The backyard's great. It's got a 3-car garage plus a carport. It's almost 3,000 square feet, which you don't find a lot in this price point. So it's going to give them a lot of space for their family. So I'm really excited. They're going to see it for the first time today. We were doing virtual showings, and yeah, I think that'll be fun. So for them, they had to be patient over 4 long months until they got a buyer. And then we started putting in offers, like serious offers where we knew the likelihood that they were going to close. Like we had a closing date. We knew that we could close any day really after December 13th. So then the next client that is also supposed to close before the end of the year, I actually helped her parents relocate here. And she moved up here as well, and now I'm helping her find a home. So we love working with families. And in her particular case, she's a first-time home buyer, and the property that we were looking at, we put an offer in that was $10,000 under asking, and the seller had just bought this property about 2.5 years ago, so he doesn't have a ton of equity. Unlike the people that I was saying, if you bought more than 4 years ago, you're probably sitting on a pretty decent amount of equity, depending on your market and all sorts of things. But he's trying to move to a larger place, and he doesn't have a lot of room because he needs to make a certain amount on the sale of his home in order to be able to afford this larger property. And for my client, she also doesn't want to be house poor. And when we've initially started looking around this time, like around the beginning of December, there was not the intention to seriously find a property before the end of the year. It just happens that this property came up. It fit really well. It showed really nicely. Didn't look like there was a ton to do. It's a low maintenance property. Like it was everything that they were looking for. And we had the inspection this week, and I have to be careful with what I say because I never know who's watching. But there were some things that came up that were unexpected on the inspection report. And because, she is trying to be financially conservative in her budget and make sound financial decisions, which I'm 100% for. I don't believe you need to spend all the way up to your pre-approval. You could be pre-approved for 700, and if you tell me I don't want to spend more than 550, then 550 is what it is. I'm not going to encourage you to spend more than you're comfortable spending. That's just not, it's not right. It's not the way that I want to do business. I know there are plenty of people who feel like they get pressured, and I am very much anti-pressure. So we negotiated a little. We submitted this offer, 10,000 under asking. Initially, the seller was not willing to accept anything less than his list price, but he did come down $3,000. It's not a lot, but my client looked at the numbers and she was like, it still makes sense within my budget. I'm prepared to move forward, which is what we did. We had inspection. Things came up that are about 5 times in cost beyond what she was prepared to take on herself. That's significant. And the seller is only willing to cover about 25% of them. So we have this chunk of repairs that need to be done in the short to midterm, but they're serious spendy repairs. And out of this chunk, she has a quarter that she's comfortable covering, and the seller has basically a quarter that he's comfortable giving in terms of concessions. And so we have this gap, and that's what we're trying to figure out now. We are working on getting more detailed quotes to find out exactly what things will cost. And we have until Wednesday to make that happen. One of the nice things about the Washington contract when you're in your inspection period is there's 4 things that can happen. You can approve the inspection and waive the contingency. That just means you're moving forward as is. You can disapprove the inspection, terminate the contract, in which case you get your earnest money back. Number 3 is you can ask for repairs or modifications to the agreement. So a repair would be the seller fixing something. A modification could be anything, but most often it's a price reduction, which would, if you're getting a mortgage, reduce your monthly payment. Or we can do a seller credit where the seller basically gives you money at closing and you bring less money to the closing table. So if your cash to close was $50,000 and you got a $10,000 seller credit, now you bring only $40,000 and you get to keep that $10,000 in your pocket to then go make those repairs. So for most of my clients, seller credits tend to be more advantageous. But sorry, one of my clients just texted me. Oh, thank you. She's so sweet. And I lost my train of thought. So we're looking at ways that we can get creative to keep the purchase together. And maybe it doesn't make sense. Maybe my client decides to back out, and that's totally okay. But at least with when I talked to her yesterday, where she's at is she wants to move forward, and we're trying to figure out a way with her lender where she can maybe move some money around, keep her payment the same, and get creative on the financing side to make things make sense. And if they do, great, and if they don't, then we'll be looking. But we weren't even planning on making offers in December. She has a very flexible timeline, and so we really set a target date, between December and like late spring or early summer. So to have this timeline that's so flexible, we also have the advantage of time. But she locked in a great rate. She thinks, and everyone's different. I have my opinions on what I think the real estate market's going to do and what the rates are going to do. Every lender you talk to will have their own opinion. And then you as a client will form your own opinion based on listening to your realtor, listening to your lender, and whatever other research you do on the market. So she feels that interest rates are going to go up over the next 6 months. And so, that has some intrinsic value in already being locked at a great rate. So more flexibility that is required in terms of this transaction. Neither my client, the buyer, or the seller have tons of room to give, and they don't have tons of flexibility, and that can be what causes a transaction or purchase to fall apart. So the more flexible you can be, the better, but we can't just print money out of thin air. Like, let me not go there. We can't print money out of thin air as individuals. And so, we have to work within our means and do what's right for us. And I am 100% your biggest advocate and support when it comes to doing what's right for you. It's not about anyone else but you. You are the final say. And that was something that my client and I have had conversations about, because she hasn't always, this is my impression, I hope she's not watching and offended, I hope this is an accurate representation, but my interpretation is she hasn't always felt empowered by her finances, and being in a position where she's buying her own home and she is the final say, she's the final decision maker on everything, is super empowering and important to her. And I just reiterate that to her every step of the way. I told her, we can go this way, we can go that way. Whatever you want to do, I'm here to facilitate and make it happen. I'll do everything in my power to keep it together, if that's what you want. That's a great reason to reach out to Hal as soon as you begin considering a move to or within the PNW. Thank you, dear. Nano says, while the Federal Reserve can print money out of thin air, causing massive inflation, this is one reason homes cost so much. It takes more worthless dollars to buy the same home. Yeah, I'm glad you said it. And the Fed and the way that our monetary system works in the US is a whole other question. Right now, at least the power that I have is to help you strategically play within the rules and the system as it is right now, and to hopefully create the best outcomes for you and your goals. That's what I'd like to do. So if you are thinking about moving to or moving within the Pacific Northwest, make sure to shoot me a text at 360-818-4438. All of my contact info is in the description below, my website, where you can browse homes. If you create an account and use your cell phone number as your password, it will alert me as you favorite homes. So if you want me to start to see what sort of homes you like, even if you're kind of in the preliminary stages, you can start doing that. You can also book a Zoom with me. My Zoom calendar is in the link below, and email and phone number and Instagram. So I think that's everything. I've got to run to go meet my clients at their inspection. Let's hope it goes very well. Fingers crossed. And I'll catch you guys next time. Ciao.